people should be asking that potential for sales hire then to establish that cultural alignment or to establish that ability to partner with the customer?
I think David hit it spot on. If you guys didn't write that down, you missed an opportunity. You could probably sell that video to people.
I agree.
That was spot on, and if that's what you're looking for, you want to ask questions that flush that stuff out.
What about as you scale, Alan? You begin to get that second and third salesperson on board. What are some of the pieces of advice you give to keeping that culture in place?
Yeah, it's interesting. Scale, you run into all sorts of now model stuff. Are we going to go regional? Are we going to go round robin? Are we going to have hunters that are doing the cold calling, lead generation stuff themselves and owning the entire sales cycle? How are we going to break this thing out? So it can start to unravel and unfold pretty quickly into making decisions on the model itself, the sales model. But I agree with so many things that David had said. If anybody's interested in really digging into how you're going to structure your sales environment, get the copy of this video and listen to that segment again, because there were a lot of brilliant points there. But the scale thing really comes down to a lot of the focus on getting the individuals with the traits that you want. Again, going back to Dave's comments there. And also going to the culture point is keeping them. Retention will be critical. And at that point, without the passion, or if the passion starts to burn out in people or whatever it may be, that's where you start facing challenges with scaling this thing.
So I mean, the retention probably begins in the beginning with the preparation before you even kick off the search. So what advice, Jim, might you have to the audience in terms of what can the existing team that's in place before you make that hire do to prepare themselves for that event so they have a successful outcome?
The number one reason why executives or just the first business hire isn't working out in the first year is because expectations were misaligned. And so first of all, I think you have to have a really tight interview process, and you might be a company of 10, 20 people. So there's probably not a lot of people to interview this person. So I think if you have any advisors, mentors, or anyone on your board that can help with the interview process, that's important. I think because the best companies and the biggest companies that have had really great recruiting processes, and if you don't, you're never gonna get there. So some people just don't take this part seriously. So these guys are probably getting calls every day from recruiters on jobs, and it's a really hot market right now. So if your process sucks, you're gonna lose the candidate. The one thing I would say though to retain once you have the finalist is actually you're going to give them an offer or her an offer. Have the candidate create a 100-day plan on what they're going to do. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's everything they learned throughout the interview process that were expected of this person in this role. Once they come to you with this, and they're ready to accept the offer as well. I mean, it's incredible what happens. Either it's all wrong and you can fix it at that moment, and then this person's going to be incredibly successful, or you're going to argue and disagree, and you're going to part ways, and you saved yourself from making a bad hire. So one form of retention is I really highly advise that 100-day plan, and then I just think that's my best advice on retention. I do believe in references heavily. I think nobody's perfect, and so you just want to know what this person's how you might have to augment them, and just what to expect, so you're not surprised on that.
So you talk about tight interview process. Sorry, Alan, do you want to interject?
I was going to say one thing about retention. One thing at Gigya about 3 years ago, when the company went through a pivot of sorts into offering this new social login technology at the time. It was built upon that. There was a period of time where there were about 4 salespeople, and because there was this change in the business around the technology and sorting out who's going to buy this stuff, it's a value prop, all these things, from a compensation perspective for the salespeople, we actually guaranteed them a monthly commission of some amount. So that even if they weren't closing deals, there was still the effort that was taking place to get out to the market, to make the pitch, to get proposals in play, all that good stuff. They still had that win of earning however many $1,000s per month as a commission of sorts to keep going at it. And it actually worked really well. For many salespeople, not all, believe it or not, but for the many salespeople that are in fact money motivated, it really worked well. It doesn't last forever. You shouldn't do that forever. But there's likely a period of time where money will heal many wounds in the field. So it was an interesting learning when we did that. Again, it wasn't forever though.
And Mitch, have you done that in the past and seen success with it also? Or how else do you look at retaining that person across those initial first few months of getting the first customers across the line?
I think definitely, and David mentioned, hey, you want people that are used to delayed gratification. So you're going to get that. But as you as a company are trying to figure out your go-to-market motion and all that, and build that kind of scale, paying salespeople for some period of time, I would say single-digit months, most likely, is keeping them motivated enough and rewarded enough. It's not like they're making all of their money in this kind of pay that you're giving them, but it's taking a little bit of the stress off so they can keep their intellectual capital well invested in the business and not be freaking out. They're all going to be running around with their hair on fire, to David's point, because that's the adrenaline rush that any of us are involved in the startup. But you want to be able to have them do that with a clear mind, and paying them some money helps them keep their mind clear so they can get the thing scaled.
David, maybe you could talk a little bit about what does the salespeople need to be in place to actually be successful, beyond the remuneration and the financial gain they get. What else should a company be doing so when that person walks in on day one, they've got either documentation in place, marketing materials, so on and so forth, so that they can succeed?
So depending on the stage of growth, a mentor is really good. We always try to assign a mentor when we hire somebody. That's tough when you are hiring to scale, because you can hire 100 people in a year. It's hard to find 100 mentors when you only have a company of 30 people. But the mentor is the first thing. The second is making sure that they have the right learning and development programs in place. So whether that is good demos for them to watch, case studies from customers, references, videos from previous salespeople, but anything that they can learn from and sort of take in the institutional knowledge that's there is really important. We also like to do a lot of cross collaboration. So if we hire a salesperson, we want them to have a buddy in the products organization or the support organization, so they can look at the business through a different lens. I think it's really important. The other thing though is you sort of think about the 100-day plan and what you want to have in place. Gia made a really good point before, which is be wary of the sales executive that comes in with a playbook, because all businesses are different, and you really want a culture where you can fail fast and learn. We had a great playbook at Salesforce. It does not work at Yammer. It doesn't work at a lot of other places. And so you really want somebody who can sort of learn and iterate on the fly. But I think the biggest thing is customer stories, videos of either the product person or the founder doing demos, talking about the value proposition, and then hearing from prospects and customers or advisors.
Why do you think they want to fail fast? Because these guys are new companies, they're going to have their first sales rep. Why do they want to fail fast?
You learn. It's the only way to learn. So it's really sort of fascinating. If you think about science, for example, the whole purpose, the mindset of science is you develop a thesis and then you go to prove or disprove it. You don't think that you failed if you disprove the thesis. You then iterate on the thesis and you go try to do it again. But for some reason in sales, that mindset doesn't carry over. It carries over to product, right? You build a product, doesn't work quite right, so you go, you fix it, you tweak it, and you release it again. I don't know why in sales that mindset doesn't carry over, but it really should carry over. And so, one area that's really important is having a culture of no blame. I find that if you have a culture of no blame, then you can have a culture of fail fast. The challenge, though, is if you're in a company or a company culture where everyone is fearful that they're going to lose their job if they lose a deal, then I'll tell you exactly what happens. Rep's going to go out to a prospect, they're going to think, ooh, this is going to be a really tough sales cycle. I don't know if I'm going to win it. So they're just going to bail. They're not even going to engage in the cycle. And that's horrible because you can learn a lot from that. And so, it's, I don't know, it's like anything else. It's like dating or anything. You just got to kiss a lot of frogs. And it's the same thing as sales. You just got to talk to a lot of people. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. Some people are going to get it right away. Some people it's going to take a little bit of time. And, I can tell you, we have failed miserably at Yammer. But we recognized it really quickly. We learned from it. We iterated. We moved on. And I think that's, that's what made us fairly efficient in the execution.
You talked there about a slow burn person versus somebody that gets off to the races
Yes.
quickly. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that, and how do you evaluate the slow burn still being the right person in the long term, and the fast burning person maybe being the wrong person long term?
Yeah, so, it's really hard. I think it gets back to the title, conversation and all of that, but I can tell you, I would be, and Mitch and I are very different in this regard, I would be the worst first rep you could ever hire. I don't have the mindset for it. I'm just not good at it. You've done it a couple of times. But I think it gets back to that sort of frenetic pace. You have to really embrace and like and want that. I would be totally lost. I didn't know what to do. But so what happens over time is you're going to see the people that you hire out of the gate to get your first 10 customers are not going to be the people that are going to then build the scale later. Now, there are a few exceptions to that. Jim Herbold from Box is a great example. He was the first person, first sales guy on the phone at Box, inside sales rep, and you would think the business would scale away from him within a year. He runs now all global sales for Box, and he's done a phenomenal job. But for the most part, you don't see that. So you end up sort of upgrading your talent really every year. Doesn't mean you get rid of the people that have been there before. They have a ton of institutional knowledge. You want to retain them. They typically are the ones that have a lot of passion. But you look for different skill sets over time. So the ones that can get you to the first 50 customers are great. They're going to carry forward. And a lot of times, they transition and make great customer success reps, customer success managers. But you look for different competencies as you get to different stages of growth. So, that answers the question.
I've heard one sales executive say to me that there's only two types of sales people to hire: rich and new.
Yeah.
So I don't know if rich means slow and new means, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. I think the biggest thing is I just think we're shifting away from just having customers to have customers. What you really want is because it is hard to get customers. It's so much easier to keep them than get new ones. So, I'm fairly lazy by nature, so I would just rather keep them forever rather than have to churn them over and over again. Because it's very hard to grow 100% year over year if you're churning, 1-2% a month on the bottom line. So, I don't know. New is good if you have a learning organization where you could grow them over time. Then it works really well because I'll tell you, somebody who's sold for you for 4 or 5 years and touched hundreds of customers, they're going to be ruthless. They are going to be unstoppable in the marketplace. But if you're constantly attriting reps, you're going to spend all of your time training up and onboarding, and you're not going to get that institutional knowledge. And Stu and I were talking before, you make a bad sales hire and it'll cost you 12 to 18 months. It is a very, very costly mistake.
Alan, how do you evaluate now you've scaled out to a large extent which of those reps are going to make it? Do you have cut-off points along the way, and what are you evaluating to determine if you think they've got the right trajectory to be successful?